Is a short-term real estate rental the best financial move for you right now? Well, my name's Joe. I am a financial planner. In this video, we're going to be talking to Tony Narcisi. He is a specialist in this area of working with Airbnb, VRBO, short-term vacation type rentals. He's built his whole business on this idea. Be sure to stick to the end because Tony's going to be breaking down common mistakes that people make that cost them money and risk factors that you need to consider when making a decision in a market. Today's video, we're going to be talking everything short-term rentals. It's a question that I've been getting a lot. And so thanks for joining us, Tony. We appreciate you.
Of course, Joe. Thanks for having me and reaching out. It's good to see you again. Joe and I worked together like a decade ago.
Yes.
So always
Yeah,
always good to
absolutely.
reconnect.
Awesome. So to start, why might someone consider investing in a short-term rental?
Most people feel like they should have some exposure to real estate as an investment
Yeah.
once they start to do well and save money and invest money. Real estate is a solid investment because it carries tax benefits. It tends to appreciate over longer time horizons, like almost inevitably. If you hold it for 10 or 20 years, it will go up. It's a finite thing. It's a physical thing that you can actually improve and affect on your own. Unlike, Nvidia stock, you can't call Jensen and tell him he should change his mind about something. You can't affect that, but you can affect real estate that you own. When it comes to short-term rentals, there are downsides, of course, but the upsides compared to traditional residential real estate are way higher cash flow potential, much more powerful tax saving potential if you manage it yourself, and enjoyment, right? Like it's a lot of short-term rentals that I'm involved with. The owners will get out and use it a few weeks out of the year, right? They plan to have their grandkids there at the lake house or the beach house or whatever. They're in markets they actually enjoy. So it's just a more enjoyable investment than owning an 8 family in Detroit that you never see or whatever. So better cash flow, way better tax potential, ability to actually own in an area that you like and use the property. Those are some of the reasons.
Awesome. Awesome. Yeah, it's definitely, opens an opportunity to really enjoy your investment, which is a pretty unique aspect of the whole thing. Could you just give us a little background? What is your experience with short-term rentals? How'd you get into it? Where are you today? And if you can, help us understand what were some of the challenges to get where you're at in the short-term rental business?
Sure, Joe. So my background, I was in the tech sales world in Boston for 10, 11 years. That's where I met Joe back in the day. But most recently, I'd been with the company for 6 years. We had gone public during my time there. I was a sales rep there. I'd done pretty well. I ended up becoming a manager and then leading some pretty awesome teams there. But at one point, it became obvious. I was actually on my honeymoon. I think about it as my brain kind of broke. It became obvious, like I just don't want to go work for somebody else for all that much longer. So I got to figure something else out. I had a short-term rental already at that point. So a few years ago, I had saved some cash. We had gone public. There was a pretty good paycheck for that. I was exploring what to do with the money and what I should start investing in. And a lot of analysis later, probably like a year and maybe 15 months worth of analysis later, I ended up buying my first ever investment property, which is a short-term rental on Cape Cod. The hardest part about starting was probably just the uncertainty, like, what should I buy? Should I do this in the first place? Is this even a good idea? But I did know a few people who had rental properties that they had put on Airbnb and stuff like that seriously, not just like on the side. So that helped talking to them, and knowledge is always helpful, learning more.
Awesome. Awesome. So it sounds like you explored your different opportunities and you went a little bit out on a ledge with this at the time.
Yeah, definitely. But I think whatever you do has to work for you. Right.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of options if you're in a boat like I was. A few years later, I ended up having a few of them. Some of them I own myself, some with partners, and managing properties for other people. And eventually got to a point where I was like, I can leave the corporate world and just do this.
Now, and tell me if I'm wrong about this. One of the things that I noticing in the short-term rental business, it's perhaps more work than buying single families or multifamilies. Looking at real estate as an investment opportunity, the short-term market seems like it has higher margins. Is that right? Is that why you would say like, short term is perhaps in some instances more favorable than longer term rentals, or would you characterize that any differently?
So you're on the right track, Joe. I mean, again, it's all got to be what's best for you, right? If you love your job and you make good money and you can't imagine leaving and you're going to be there until you're 50 or 60, you're probably more thinking about stable long-term investments you can continue to stack up, right?
Mhm.
And so short-term rentals do offer much higher cash flow returns, especially in better tax benefits in some cases. But that's because there's more risk and they are more work, right?
Yeah.
Now, if you have somebody else manage your property, then if you have a good one, it's really no work at all, just like a long-term rental. But that risk element is still there.
Yeah.
Um, no one's ever going to pass a law that says you can't rent out your four-family apartment anymore to families, but that could happen if you're operating a short-term rental, especially if you don't do the right level of diligence on the market before you buy one, right? So
Mm.
risk, higher potential returns, and more effort required to run it if it's you doing it, especially.
Okay. All right. Interesting. Yeah, that's a good point because the regulatory element is huge, right? The local town can make a decision that affects you. Huh. Yeah.
Yeah, we'll talk through risk at some point. For my money, that's like the biggest one.
Okay.
Um, I would say like anything, like literally any investment you could ever make, there's risk, and you just need to weigh it and do your diligence and figure out, has this market been existing on vacation rentals for 50 years and they're very much for it and they have favorable policies around it?
Right.
I'm trying to in some city, that COVID happened and it just exploded there and the city hates short-term rentals. Plenty of places like that you should definitely not invest in. But you have to do your diligence, right? Just like anything else.
Yes. Okay. So tying that back to your first rental, you did it in Cape Cod. So I'm imagining you were like, okay, well, renting in Cape Cod has been around as long as we can think of. Was that why you decided that was your first investment?
Part of it, yeah. I was initially thinking of a ski house up in Vermont. We got married up in Stowe, Vermont, and we just kind of love it up there. And I snowboard, and my wife, Mary's gotten into skiing. At the time, with my budget, was trying to spend, I don't know, 700 grand on a house. And I could not find anything that I liked that would actually make money based on the data that I could get my hands on. So I never really was thinking about the Cape, frankly, but I lived in Waltham in Boston. So it was like, it's an hour and 20 minutes away. It's never a bad thing to be closer to your investment, right? You don't necessarily have to be. Eventually I was like, what about the Cape? That's a very vacation rental friendly market. It's close
Yeah.
by. It's kind of proven. And typically in those markets, you can find something that works. It's often not going to be as profitable because it's so proven and safe, right? So that there's the lever again. But I ended up finding this place specifically in the Cape. I was like, I can afford this. It's really nice. I think it'll make money, and it did make money. It's drivable. So those are some of the reasons behind that.
Nice. Okay. All right, cool. Now, one thing that I see quite frequently is people with an aspiration to get a second home. And their thought process is, okay, I can buy this second home. Maybe I can't afford it out of pocket, but I may be able to short term rental it a good chunk of the time I'm not using it. And thereby cut my costs significantly, perhaps even breaking even when you factor in like the mortgage or whatever goes into that. Do you see that frequently as an approach that someone's like looking to get into the short-term rental business? Like, what are your thoughts around someone with that sort of mentality?
All the time. Yeah. All
Yeah.
the time. I think again, it's a matter of goals and wealth and comfort. I mean,
Yeah.
I know people who have multiple mansions that they will never rent out, and they're fine with that. And for me, like, I can't imagine that just
Yeah.
growing up the way I did, even if I was completely independently wealthy. Like I just can't imagine doing that. But tons of people, especially in Cape Cod and all those markets like that. Sedona in Arizona,
Yep.
that's another market that I'm in. Yeah.
Hmm. Nice. Is there any markets that you would say are, good or bad just in general? Or what does that look like? If you decide you want to get into a short-term rental and you're like, oh, I want to get a second home in Florida, is there any way someone would know if it's like a good or bad market?
It's I wouldn't really call most markets good or bad. It's kind of like, you and I were talking earlier about how you're a runner and you've done all these marathons and stuff. So I used to be big into the fitness and nutrition and all that. So it's the same thing with calories and foods. Like we can all agree a Snickers bar is probably not uh, the most nutritious snack, but depending on your goal and situation, if you're running a marathon and cramping up or whatever, like it's a pretty damn good snack. Or if you're trying to gain weight, it's a good tool for that. So things aren't inherently good or bad. And that's kind of the case with markets too. There are some markets I would straight up say are bad just based on regulation.
Right.
Uh,
Okay.
Most of the time, I am not a fan of cities. Like investing in a short-term rental when that's your only plan, your only play that will pencil out or whatever in a city is probably a bad idea. You want to look for markets where the regulation and the climate towards rental and the vacation market world is favorable.
Mhm.
Other than that, I mean, there's markets that are crazy saturated. Like there's, thousands of Airbnbs in Scottsdale, or there's tons in the Smoky Mountains. So it's difficult. But the reason they're so saturated is because there's a whole bunch of those that are making tons of money. Like there's a reason for the saturation. That's like
Right.
saying you shouldn't go open a business in Manhattan because it's too saturated. It's like it's a two-sided thing, right? And if you're
Yeah.
at the
Okay.
top of the market with the right offering, you will kill.
Uh,
And if you go in there and you don't know what you're doing, it's probably an awful idea to invest in that market. But frankly, you shouldn't buy a short-term rental anyway if you're in that boat.
Interesting. Okay, that's good. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense actually. And that's not what I would have thought, right? I think you want to get away from the saturated market because there's all this competition, but you're right. It's like it's saturated for a reason. That's where the money's at, right? And it's just a matter of getting a piece of that share.
And unfortunately, what I see more, because I'm in, various groups with other investors and owners and
Yeah.
things like that. What I see more is people buying in a saturated market and they're buying some mundane property that is not like, it doesn't have a view, it doesn't have the pool, it's not right next to the thing you want to be right next to. And in some cases, they're also overpaying for these properties because of the rental history. And I just think there's a lot of mistakes being made around that. But saturated market, if you don't know what you're doing, definitely don't buy there. But if you know what you're doing and your budget is appropriate for what you need in that market in order to win, it might be your best move. So it's really just like it's a more complex answer than
Mhm.
it's good or it's bad. You know,
Yeah, that makes sense. So if someone was trying to like think and pursue this idea a little bit more, maybe they haven't fully reached the decision where they're ready to take that leap, but they're trying to like map it out, kind of where you were, a few years ago. What would be some of the first steps that you would recommend that they explore to kind of get comfortable with the idea or explore how viable it might be for their situation?
I would say first they should really assess what it is they're trying to get out of the investment, right? So like goals and time horizon are important. And secondly, they should also, in my opinion, and people might disagree with this, but I think they should consider what they like. If you listen to the Founders podcast is a good example, a great example.
Love
The
that
host.
podcast.
Yeah, it's good, right?
Yeah.
If you're listening to this, you should check it out. But David Senra is the host, and he basically reads all these autobiographies and biographies of, Nikola Tesla and Henry Ford and even like Napoleon and just like mostly entrepreneurs though who have built enduring brands and crazy successful companies. And it's a recurring theme with all of them that if you pick something you're not interested in, you probably won't do very well. It's because when things get difficult, you'll just do something else. You'll give up. And the compounding nature of returns means that you therefore will not succeed very much. So, um, you can definitely invest in things that are not interesting to you at all and just do it just based on numbers and on a spreadsheet or whatever. But for me, I'm actively involved. I'm building a whole company around it now, like a couple of different small businesses around it now. It's because I like it. Right.
Yeah.
So I would consider your goals. Are you looking for cash flow to get out of your job in the next 2 or 3 years? Are you looking for long-term appreciation? Or are you really just looking for tax savings because you have like a huge bonus coming this year and you need to do something about it? Those will help you determine what you should invest in. And then what do you like? Um, and if you do all that and you decide you like short-term rentals like me, I would start reading everything you can and listening to everything you can and talking to people like me or people who have done it in markets that are interesting to you and going from there.
Cool. Yeah. That's awesome. That's awesome. Now, tell us a little bit more about the businesses that you're kind of carving out in this area. I know you are available for people to like follow up with if they want to learn more about how do I approach this? Like, how do I break this down if I'm like ready to move forward with, a short term rental and that's something interesting for me?
Sure. Yeah, there's a few things. If you're in the Cape Cod or upstate New York, Catskills, Hudson Valley markets, let's connect because there's a lot of things that we could probably help you with. We manage properties in those regions. In the case of the Catskills and Hudson Valley, we're actually building brand new properties that you can rent out that are really potentially amazing and unique investments. Outside of that, most of what I've been doing lately is just consulting with people like you and I, or people like consulting with the version of me from 4 years ago who was sitting on this cash and had no idea what to do with it and was trying to figure out, do I do long-term rentals? I've started consulting with people like that to basically help them understand what their goals are, help them align to a strategy. And then if short-term rentals are the play for them, teaching them how to evaluate deals, how to underwrite, how to manage these properties if they want to manage it themselves, all sorts of things. So yeah, those are the things I help with. If that's interesting, people can feel free to reach out.
Cool. Cool, man. Thank you so much for your time and your expertise today. Really appreciate it. It's been great catching up with
So
you. Thanks, everyone.